Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1301B, and today's date is June 8th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, It's All Coming Apart. This is where it gets scary. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, Comey was giving testimony today, and I believe the corporate media thought that he was just going to come out and say that, yes, Trump was obstructing justice, yes, there was a Russian investigation going on, and yes, there was Russian collusion. And none of this was said whatsoever. Actually, the opposite was said. And it's starting to look like Comey has gotten himself into a little bit of trouble, and a lot of the information that was coming out, well, it doesn't jive in what really happened, especially when you look at the timelines. Now, let's start off with the memo, because James Comey, he wrote a memo. It was leaked to the New York Times, and James Comey said that he was concerned that Trump would lie about the nature of their meeting, which is why he kept a written record of their meetings, and he believes anything that he wrote down is personal to him, even though it was in the FBI's office and he was working as an FBI agent at the time, which means it's not really personal to him because it was in the framework of working in government. So really, it belongs to the people. But the question was asked of him, well, how did this memo, how did it leak out? How did it get to the New York Times? Did you actually read it to the New York Times over the phone? And he said, no, it wasn't me. I gave it to my friend, Daniel Richman, a Columbia Law School professor, and he transmitted it to the New York Times through the phone. Now, the New York Times never received this memo. It was read to them. So we see right now he leaked information of a private conversation with the President of the United States. And Trump's lawyer, Mark Kasowitz, is calling Comey out on this and saying that, well, the timeline of what you're saying really doesn't make sense about the leaked memo. He went on to say, the leaks of this privileged information began no later than March 2017, when friends of Mr. Comey have stated he disclosed to them the conversations he had with the president during their January 27, 2017 dinner and February 14, 2017 White House meeting. Today, Mr. Comey admitted that he leaked to friends his purported memos of this privileged conversations, one of which he testified was classified. He also testified that immediately after he was terminated, he authorized his friends to leak the contents of these memos to the press in order to prompt the appointment of a special counsel. Now, although Mr. Comey testified he only leaked the memos in response to the tweet, the public record reveals that the New York Times was quoting from these memos the day before the referenced tweet, which seems that Comey used this to retaliate against Trump for firing him. So basically, he leaked information. And the question is, having called Trump a liar, did Comey just get caught in an even bigger lie? Now, let's take this a little bit further. Jim Risch was asking Comey many different questions. And there was a story out in the New York Times that Trump was colluding with Russia. And, of course, then it spread to all the other news agencies, and everyone believed that Trump was colluding with Russia. And Jim Risch said to Comey, okay, so again, so the American people can understand this, the report by the New York Times, that was not true. Is that a fair statement? Comey said, it was not true. Again, all of you know this, but maybe the American people don't. So that whole story in the corporate media was completely false. Now let's move on to the obstruction of justice. Now, during the firing of Comey, there was no Russian investigation on Trump. Actually, Trump said, you know what? Why don't you investigate everyone to find out if there is anything going on? But there was no investigation on Trump right now. So he didn't do it to basically stop the investigation because there was no investigation. And Comey is not the only one investigating. They have teams of people that do this. So getting rid of one person does not stop an investigation. But Risch was out there, and he went on to say, boy, you nailed this down on page 5, paragraph 3. You put this in quotes, words matter. You wrote down the words so we could have all the words in front of us now. There are 28 words that are there in quotes, and it said, I hope this is the president speaking. I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. I hope you can let this go. Now, those are his exact words. Is that correct? Comey said, yes, those are his exact words. Risch said, and you wrote them here and you put them in quotes. Comey said, correct. Risch said, thank you for that. He did not direct you to let it go. Comey, not in his words, no. Risch said, he did not order you to let it go. Comey again, those words are not in order. And Risch went on to say, now, like me, you probably did hundreds of cases, maybe thousands of cases, charging people with criminal offenses. And of course, you have knowledge of thousands of cases out there where people have been charged. Do you know of any case where a person has been charged for obstruction of justice, that for the matter of any other criminal offense, where they said or thought they hoped for an outcome? Comey, I don't know well enough to answer, and the reason I keep saying his words is I took it as a direction. Risch said, you may have taken it as a direction, but that is not what he said. He said, I hope. You don't know of anyone who has ever been charged for hoping something. Is that a fair statement? Comey says, I don't as I sit here. Now, of course, the corporate media is not going to be really reporting on this part of the conversation because they don't want to bring this part up, because we need to remember this is coming from Comey's side. Trump didn't testify to this, so it's only what Comey is telling the Senate panel. And he put together a statement, and he put things into quotes of what he thought Trump said. Now, again, you're hearing one side of the story. Now, a lot of people saying, well, that meant he needed to stop. That told him to do it. But no, Comey didn't say that. Comey believed that's what he thought he meant or what he said. That's not what he said. And if you read 18 U.S. Code Section 1505, basically, this is the part of obstruction of justice. You can see that, guess what? It didn't happen. This is what this section says. Whoever, with intent to avoid, evade, prevent, or obstruct compliance, in whole or in part, with any civil investigative demand duly and properly made under the Antitrust Civil Process Act, willfully withholds, misrepresents, removes from any place, conceals, cover up, destroys, mutilates, alerts, or by any other means falsifies any document, material, answer to written interrogatories, or oral testimony which is the subject of such demand, or attempts to do so or solicit another to do so. Whoever corruptly, or by threats or force, or by any threatening letter or threatening communication, influences or obstructs or impedes or endeavors to influence, obstruct, or impede the due and proper administration of the law under which any pending proceeding is being had before any department or agency of the United States, or the due and proper exercise of the power of inquiry under which any inquiry or investigation is being held by either House or any committee of either House or any joint committee of the Congress, shall be fined under this title or put into prison for 5 years, and so on. He did not threaten. He did not communicate in a threatening manner. He was not threatening or influencing Comey in any way with his exact words. He didn't do any of this. This is not obstruction of justice. And again, we're only hearing one side of the story. Basically, Comey is out there saying, yes, this is what he said. Now, Trump, all he has to do is say, I didn't say this. Here's my statement of what happened. So then you end up with he said and what Trump said, which is right. You end up nowhere. But Comey already admitted in his words there was no order to do anything. It doesn't matter what he feels or what he believes. In the words, he did not order him to do anything. Now, what's very interesting about all of this with Comey is that he typed up this entire statement and he gave it to the Senate, and it was made public a day ahead of time so people could read it. And you could tell that a lot of this stuff was already scripted. The questions were already out there. And the problem I have with this is, where is the memo? Now, think about this for a second. The Senate didn't ask for the memo. Wouldn't you think this would be the first thing they would want ahead of time so they can see what was in the memo? Wouldn't you think that Comey would attach the memo to his statement, or actually use the memo as his statement? Why did he type up something completely different? Now, they asked about the memo during the hearing, and he looks a little flustered, saying, "Where is it?" He says, well, Mueller has it. Of course, the special investigator who's looking into the Russian collusion and everything. But his friend also has a copy. Now, how did he get it to his friend? I'm assuming, and I will assume on this, that it was electronic, and maybe he emailed it, because I can't believe he sat there and he wrote out the entire thing, made a copy, and met his friend and handed him a copy. Because even if he did do that, wouldn't he keep a copy for himself? And in today, especially in government, you know that most likely his memos are all computerized to keep them in order, to easily search for them. And he probably saves them in a folder, if this is what he does. But the whole thing doesn't make sense, because where was the memo? I mean, it was read to the New York Times. It was given to a friend. They were having this hearing. He created a statement, but no memo. So let's see if the Senate, Congress actually ever gets that memo. Because I have a funny feeling it just doesn't exist. I think it's his statement that he put together, and I think this is what he's been using. And I don't really believe maybe there's even a memo in the FBI, because it just seems that nobody was asking for it, and this is what was driving the whole entire thing. Now, something else that doesn't make sense, James Comey timeline on not informing Jeff Sessions. Something just doesn't add up. And this is when James Comey, in his testimony statement surrounding a part of his explanation for not informing Attorney General Jeff Sessions about the content of the February 14th Oval Office discussion with President Trump about Mike Flynn. Now, let's consider the timeline here. February 8th, Jeff Sessions was confirmed. February 14th, Comey meets with President Trump in the Oval Office. March 1st, Sessions and Ambassador Kislyak, this controversy begins. March 2nd, Sessions recuses himself from the Russian investigation. Now, there's a problem here. At the time outlined by the FBI Director James Comey, February 14th, there was nothing to indicate Attorney General Sessions would recuse himself. Why on February 14th would the FBI leadership team and James Comey be saying, "We conclude it made little sense to report it to A.J. Sessions, who we are expected would likely recuse himself from involvement in the Russian-related investigation"? So when did he recuse himself? March 2nd. That's very interesting. So why would they say February 14th? Because that was 2 weeks later. So something is wrong here. How did he know that Jeff Sessions was going to do this? Well, either the FBI has psychic power and they can see into the future and they knew this, or maybe they were spying on him, and part of a conversation with Kislyak or someone else, they heard him say this, and they knew it was from Sessions because he was unmasked. So this timeline doesn't make sense. Now, during the whole investigation of this hearing, Comey said something very interesting, because this was actually unbelievable. He said, and he detailed, with his interaction with Attorney General Loretta Lynch, about his specific language about the Clinton email investigation. For the first time, the FBI director said before the Senate that President Obama's Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, asked him to downplay the Hillary Clinton's email scandal. Comey said Lynch instructed him not to call the criminal investigation into the Clinton server a criminal investigation. Instead, Lynch told Comey to call it a matter, which kind of confused him. Comey cited that pressure from Lynch to downplay the investigation as one of the reasons he held a press conference to recommend the Department of Justice not to seek to indict Clinton. Now, basically, the FBI is only supposed to investigate. The Justice Department takes all that information and they make the decision on what to do with it. So this wasn't FBI's Comey's place to make this decision. His decision was to investigate to the best of his ability and hand that off to the Justice Department. So who was obstructing justice at this point? It looks like it was Loretta Lynch. And it looks like James Comey admitted to colluding with Loretta Lynch to falsify his statements to benefit Clinton's campaign. Very interesting. Now, CNN is out there, and they are pushing the story about Russian hackers who allegedly stirred up the diplomatic crisis gripping the Gulf states. And Lavrov was out there saying, listen to CNN, this is becoming absolutely ridiculous. He says, CNN and other media outlets, they don't deserve to be called media outlets because all they do is push misinformation. They tell lies, none of it's true, and they make up things. Basically what he's saying, this is fake news. And we could see right now the corporate media is scrambling. They don't know how to make heads or tails of what is happening out in Qatar. And they're trying to explain this away. And we need to understand that there are many things happening at this point in time. And yes, I do believe that Trump, Russia, Iran, they're all involved in this, in doing something very, very backhanded to the deep state. Think about this for a second. And we need to go back in time a little bit. Remember, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and the rest, they've been supporting. They have camps within their countries. These are the terrorist camps where they train all these individuals. Actually, if you look back, there are articles out there that say, yes, Qatar has these moderate rebel camps where they're training these moderate rebels, which are the terrorists, to go into Syria. Now, all these countries, they were involved in this. And the base of operation, a lot of it was in Qatar. Some of it was in Jordan. And Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the rest, they're funding all of this. And what's very interesting about all of this is that the reason they're going after Qatar is, first of all, Trump was out there telling the Middle East this is over. And they're using Qatar because this is where the deep state is embedded. They have camps. They've been training individuals. And this is basically sending a message to the deep state. The deep state still is training these terrorist groups, these paid mercenaries. Where do you think they all come from? I mean, if you notice, most of them, they come out of Jordan and they move into Syria because Jordan has the border with Syria, so that makes it very easy. But a lot of the camps are in Qatar. And right now, this whole process is to squeeze the deep state. This is what this is all about. It's not about attacking Qatar. It's about going in and getting the deep state that is in Qatar. Remember, in Qatar, the United States has troops. There are troops inside Qatar, about 10,000 U.S. troops. And NATO has forces in there. Now, Turkey is sending troops into this area. So we can see right now that this is the major plan right now. Now, by doing this and removing the deep state, basically we could see many things happening all at once. First of all, they're using Qatar as the scapegoat. They're not telling the public that, oh yes, this is where the deep state lives. This is what the U.S. has been doing with the intelligence agencies. We've been training terrorists all along, and we've been shipping them off to all different countries. Again, this would rip the country apart. And right now, this is not part of the agenda. Maybe it will come down to that, where he just has to come out and say, listen, here are the facts. But at this point, I don't think everyone is ready to hear this. I think a lot of people will be bothered by this. I don't think a lot of people will even believe that this has been happening, where the United States has been supplying weapons, funding the Islamic State, funding Al-Qaeda. It would be a complete disaster. But what we're seeing right now is that the Qatar minister, the foreign minister, is going to visit Russia. And they're going to be talking about, he's meeting with Lavrov, they're going to be talking about the entire situation. And we could see right now, this is not about surrounding Iran, because Iran already is back in Qatar, Russia is back in Qatar, and Trump is out there playing the middle ground. Very interesting. Where he's speaking to Qatar, he's speaking to Saudi Arabia, telling everyone we need to get along, and saying, listen, let's force the deep state out of this country. Let's get them on the run. This is what this whole plan is about. And we can see that this has been formulated and it has been processed. And this is what they are doing at this point. And the whole thing about Iran having the Islamic State in their country, this was the deep state sending a message to Iran, back off. Because the deep state, they know what is going on here. They're being squeezed. So what is the deep state doing right now? Well, yesterday we talked about this report where Assad said, listen, if the United States, crosses the red line, we're going to attack. Now, the question is, why would he attack? Just like, why would he use chemical weapons on his own people? First of all, we know that was completely fake, phony, and false. And why would Assad, after all these years where he's winning against the terrorist groups, Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, the moderate rebels, and he's clearing the country out, liberating all these towns and villages, why would he all of a sudden attack the United States and want to go to war? Does that make any sense? And bring Russia into this war? It doesn't make any sense. This is the deep state setting everything up, and we already see an incident where this drone just so happened to fly into the U.S. de-escalation zone, even though there isn't one, and the U.S. shot it out of the air because they said it was a threat. Now, it was nowhere even near where they were. It crashed somewhere out in the desert, and basically the news is out there saying that Syria was about to attack, which is absolutely ridiculous with this little tiny drone, because what was going to be the benefit of this? What were they really going to hit? Was this really going to do that much damage and destroy what was going on there? No. This was a complete false flag to try to get the event started. And this is what we see happening right now. They are scared. They're back in the corner with Comey's testifying, which led absolutely nowhere. The corporate media is spinning, trying to make heads and tails. Basically, what's happening now, Trump right now is on the offensive, and the deep state is on the defensive. The tables have turned. You might not see this, but we could see everything is being shifted right now, and the deep state, well, they're not just going to sit back and say, hey, we're just going to leave Qatar, we're going to leave Jordan, and we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to just, bow out of this whole entire thing. No, they're going to fight back. Now they want the war started. Now they're going to push their agenda. And this is the scary part. We have reached that point where they have nothing left to lose. They're losing the battle. They understand this, and this is their only alternative. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.